designed your life to where you love it, you never need to escape it. This is the life philosophy of Alex Schachne, my guest today. So, Alex is a former college basketball player and a second time founder. But Alex didn't always have a clear idea of what path he wanted to take in his life. So when Alex was just going to college, he went on a quest to interview incredibly successful people, and he hustled, cold emailed many of them. And after hearing each person's life and career story, this gave him a chance to see which paths truly resonated with him. And it was these conversations that changed what Alex thought was possible for his future. So from that, and a lot of personal growth work, Tim Ferriss, Tony Robbins, a lot of his mentors, Alex now claims that his life's path is to help other people find their path. In other words, to inspire people to do the things that inspire them. This led Alex to build Pats. You can check it out at pats.audio. I'll include a link in the show notes. And Pats is a social network for students to explore life and career paths and get advice or mentorship through short audio clips. So Alex is a solo founder and is currently a one-man army where he's literally built everything on his own, from coding to teaching himself design and even doing marketing. It's pretty impressive. But this is an interesting story because Alex is still very early in his journey. Like, he hasn't raised a huge sum of money yet, like many of my previous guests have, and is still figuring out a lot of things, which is honestly just like me, where I'm currently at. So take that perspective for this conversation, and we'll run with it. So you're listening to the Inventing the Future podcast with your host, Julian. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Mindflow, which is a personal growth-focused social app. If you're a growth-driven person, check out the Mindflow app on the App Store to embark on growth journeys that are meaningful to you and to be able to grow alongside your friends. This is on authentic, raw, and vulnerable social media and not a toxic one. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into the conversation with Alex. All right, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Inventing the Future podcast. I have an awesome guest with me here today, Alex. Alex, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm pumped to be here.
Absolutely. It's going to be awesome. Alex is also a fellow Founders Inc. F.Inc. Member. We're here in this awesome space. You can see people in the back here grinding as they always do. I'm sure Alex was probably coding or doing some shit before this.
Yeah, exactly.
But cool, Alex. So, we'll dive into your current startup paths and things in a bit. But I'm curious just to start off with the origin and what you would say was like your early upbringing and early influences that kind of led you down this path to become a founder.
Yeah. All right. So I think it all started really with basketball. That was kind of the founding. I'd say that set the whole foundation for my mental model, the way I kind of approach life, like the belief I have in myself. It was almost like I say basketball is kind of like a training ground for learning like what the truth was for me, because it was this, really long quest. I mean, I started playing basketball when I was like 3 years old. And so origin story, I guess, goes all the way back. I was inspired by like Mike, So I think I remember watching Like Mike or Space Jam, one of those movies, and I just like, something drew me to it. Like Michael Jordan's my favorite player growing up. I would wear like NBA jerseys to school all the time. I was always playing basketball. I met a really influential coach when I was in 5th grade, and that was with my kind of local team. And his name was Kareem, and he really kind of impressed upon me like how much of the game is mental, and I remember he kind of had these mantras, these things he would say all the time about like, how to basically going into a game is kind of like going to war, and And, you know, he would just teach us all these life lessons. And I actually ended up training with him every summer, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. And, you know, he would give me like these books on mindset and, yeah. And he gave me this book on Michael Jordan. I think it was just called Jordan. It was like an autobiography. And I think I really just like embraced this Mamba mentality. Kobe Bryant was also like one of my biggest inspirations growing up. Crazy story. I met Kobe when I was 5.
Whoa.
And that kind of like, so Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and this coach Kareem, and then my next basketball coach Mergen Sina, who I played for in high school. They really set the whole foundation for I think this founder journey now.
Interesting. And what would you say was like, what was it that basketball gave you, or taught you that led you in this direction later to become a founder?
Absolutely. So again, I think so. The most pivotal moment I can remember actually is when I started. So my progression was like I was like the best kid in my town, or one of the best kids in my town, and so then I go and I play on a team where now it's just not my town, it's the whole state, right? And it's like the best kids in the state. And I didn't play, I want to say I didn't play 1 minute on this team.
Wow.
Like I said, I mean, we had 2 NBA now players who are in the NBA, at least 8 Division I guys. But I went from like being the man to literally not playing at all. And I remember I went on, you know, I flew to Georgia for a tournament one time, and I was also 11. Now so let me set the stage, right? I'm 11 years old. I'm like 5'2". There's players on my team who are 11 and 6'6". Okay, there's 2 players exactly. Yeah, and I went to Georgia, and I remember I didn't play. I basically played like garbage minutes. So in basketball, like you if you get in at like, you know, there's like 30 seconds left in the second quarter, and that's when that's the first time you get in the game. Like you almost rather not play at all, because at that point it's just like you're getting thrown in, and like and at this point, you know, I traveled all the way to Georgia. It was like my whole identity, and I basically sat the bench for the whole tournament. And I remember coming back to my dad and saying, "Look, I want to quit. Like I don't want to. Like basically, I want to go back to my team." And my dad was just like, "No, you made a commitment. You got to finish it out." So I stayed on with this team, and this was like in March. So I joined this team in January, and then in March, you know, this happened, and so then for another 3-4 months, I stayed on this team, and I just had to show up every day and try to battle my way into some, you know, basically playing time. And
what'd you do? Did you just train like really freaking hard?
Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing, right? Yeah, I did. I trained. I mean, then it became like, okay, I have to sacrifice. And it started to teach me, I think, lessons in commitment, sacrifice. But really, I don't think the lesson hit me till later, because I finished out that team, right? And then once I kind of fulfilled the commitment I had to them, I found another coach, which ended up being my high school coach, and I got a lot better. And I like I said, I trained with my coach Kareem. You know, every day in the summer, we would meet literally every day at like 10 a.m. We'd go from like 10 a.m. for like 2 hours, and then sometimes we'd go like 2 times a day. And this was when I was like 11, 12, and then I'd go to the pool, and then I'd like bike back, and like, you know, I'd go hang out with my friends a little bit, to come back and then train again. And and then that I got a lot better, and I grew. And then I remember like a year later, I was playing against the team that I had left, that I didn't play at all on. And I was now starting point guard against them. And I remember we went down to the wire with them, and I was like, basically I was really competing. You know, I was like, I went from being not in the game to I felt like I was kind of on their level. And so looking back on that, it really showed me like, you know, like basketball was just this constant like up and down like journey. And it really was me against me, because, I mean, I don't know. It's just, that's how I started to see it. It's like I was the only one in my way. And so basically if I overcame myself and my doubts, and I really struggled with confidence, like, because some games I'd be like up here and some days down there. So yeah, that's a long way of saying it kind of forced me to go through this constant struggle of like, okay, I want to be one of the best, but also, you look at me genetically, I'm 5'9" on a good, 5'9"
On a good day.
On a good day. Yeah, probably not your typical archetype of a basketball player. So yeah, that set the foundation. I can tell you, I mean, literally going through these cycles of like, I felt like I had a breakthrough and then I'm back and I level up, but now I'm like, I got to get better again, So going through these cycles of like, I'm the best in my town. Then I go to the statewide and I'm not that great, right? So I got to break through that level. Okay, now I'm like competitive, one of the best in the state. Like, what does it take to be one of the best in the country? Like, and keep going, through those levels of like, what does that take? It really, I mean, like 8 years of that, 10 years of that, it set like a crazy foundation.
What gives you the courage to keep pushing forward when you want to give up?
Yeah.
Especially because I've noticed like you're someone that has a lot of determination, right? Like in your startup right now, you're kind of like doing everything. You're a one-man army. You're designing, you're coding, you're trying to market.
Yeah.
It's impressive. But like, where does that determination come from? Why?
I think, again, I think it's like the foundation of when I saw what the people who succeeded in basketball, that was my context growing up, right? Like, who were the people that were succeeding in that? And they had a certain mindset, and that mindset was like, basically at all costs.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to either do this thing or I'm gonna die trying. Right. Yeah. Like I think Will Smith has that. Like, I'm gonna die on this treadmill, like that. And I adopted that mindset. I was like, so the story, I met Kobe, when I was 5, I was at Disneyland, and it was like Christmas, and I remember someone yells like, oh my God, Kobe's over there, and I had 5 years old, but I love basketball, right? So I sprint over, I'm like looking around frantically, I just see this massive guy, and I didn't even say anything, I just like stood there, and I was like, oh my God, that's Kobe. And the next day, the Lakers played, and my dad was pointing out Kobe Bryant. And I think, honestly, I just adopted. Then I watched, Kobe Bryant had a documentary called Kobe Doing Work. And it was a Spike Lee documentary. And it was Kobe in a game just talking about his mindset. And this was like Kobe 2008, right? And I think that really set up the foundation of when I was a young kid. So a few things, a few core things happened, right? Like, first is my parents got divorced when I was 8 or 9. And I was, before that, in 3rd grade, I was like a menace. I was like a daredevil menace. I was out of control. My friends' parents, I think, would ban me from coming to their houses, And I went through a period of massive transformation between, 4th and 5th or 4th and 6th grade. And a big part of it was I think I just Kobe became my hero. I got a fat head of him on my wall. My whole growing up, my room was decorated all Kobe Bryant stuff, memorabilia. And this was his peak, right? So I remember the Lakers, they lost to the Celtics in 2008. They came back, they won in 2009. And Kobe in between then, there's actually a documentary coming out on the Redeem Team, but it was the second coming of the 1992 Dream Team, and Kobe was the leader, and Michael Jordan was the leader of the 92 team. So Kobe, to me, he was just had this gravitas, this greatness about him that I just adopted that mindset.
What is that mindset? How would you articulate it?
It's the Mamba mentality or Mamba mindset is, it's going. Like I said, it's either you're gonna win or you're gonna die. That's it. That's
There's
kind
no
of
in
the
between.
simplest.
It's binary.
Yeah, exactly. It's binary. It's I said I'm gonna do this. I'm doing it, or I'm dying. Those are the two options. And I'm okay with the trade. That's it. That's kind of it. And he would always. I mean, there's crazy Kobe stories, but he would always go the extra mile. He would literally in a NBA game, you know, there's stories where he would research the guy who's guarding him all the way back to like high school. He would bring up like one of the guy's like high school ex-girlfriend's names. He would just say it. He'd be like, Miranda. And then he'd get a bucket, right? He'd like go get a bucket. Yeah. And then the guy
fucking them.
And yeah, and the guy guarding would be like, what is he talking about? Like, and then eventually it's like, oh my God, like he's gone to that length, that extent. So it's really what the Mamba mentality is about, I think it sacrifice for what you want. And it means that if you say you want something, like you're making a trade. Like there's a trade-off, and it's explicitly like I'm giving up all this other stuff. Like Kobe for a long time, he wasn't a good friend. You know, he said this, like, I can't be a good friend because I got to go. Yeah, I'm waking up at 4 a.m. to do my first workout. Then I got another workout at 8 a.m. Then I get lift in. Then he's doing 4 a day workouts. He can't be. He doesn't have time. You know, like, but that's, and so I just felt like I adopted that. Like, yeah, I need it. That's what it requires. If that's what it requires, like, that's what I got to do. Yeah. And yeah, I think that part of it was my coaches too. Like I said, that I had this coach Kareem, and I had this other coach, Morgan Cena, and it was like, look, do you want to be great? Because I think that's what it requires. And I also had this like obsessive personality, I think, from when I was young, of like, I just got like if I pick something, I just like went.
You'd full send it.
Yeah, I'd full send it. It's like there's no like middle ground. It's like I'm either doing this thing or I'm not doing this thing. But if I say I'm going to do it, like, yeah, I'm doing it. And so it's a mix of, I think, like obsessive personality, like extreme like commitment, perseverance, and then seeing it work once. You know, like, because to see it the first time it works, right? Where it's like, okay, this coach told me, like, or Kobe, I adopted this mindset, and like I put in the work and I kept putting it in, and eventually it paid off. And that's like, oh, cool, okay. So like, let me up the ante, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna do this again, you know? And it's like startups now are really testing that, because it's like, how long can you go delaying the gratification? How long can you wait before the actual reward comes? And at this point, like, I've been doing startups since, you know, for like 4.5 years. Like, seriously, I've been serious about it with this type of mindset, and still like, it's like testing me, right? Like, it's like, how long can I go? But I still have this like unwavering faith that like it will, in the end, the results will come. So it's like also about falling in love with the process. I think that's huge. Yeah,
no doubt. I mean, you have to be, to some degree, irrationally optimistic. But at the same time, irrationally, optimistic, but also very realistic about what the risks are, what's not going well. So it's a very tricky balance to get right.
Yeah.
But it's very important to do so. But yeah, I'm curious then, like, what was the transition like from basketball and then entrepreneurship?
Yeah,
like, I know you got into computer science. You had some early mentors. Actually, one thing I'd like to hear too is, I know you graduated from from high school, and then you're like, shit, like, what am I gonna do with my career? So you went and sought out like different people to learn about their careers. Speak about that a little bit. How you sought those people out, how you got access to them, what you learned from them, and how they led you down computer science and being a founder.
Yeah, right. So it all started with this. I had a recognition early on about what you're talking about in terms of motivation, and how that was really because I was like, okay, there's kind of this template that I've seen work, right? I do the Kobe mindset, or like I basically say I'm going to do this thing. I sacrifice a bunch of stuff, and then eventually, with enough time, it comes. So then I had read like Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers and Peak by Anders Ericsson, and like all these books about what does success take and how do you achieve peak performance and all that stuff. And to me, there was a clear formula. It was like deliberate practice. So like I'm constantly seeking to get better. I'm surrounding myself with better people. I'm going into, like, eventually I think you get to a point where you're just humbled by the reality of a situation, and you say, you know what, I don't have the answers. Like, I got to go find some people who are actually winning and model them, or like get in the room with them, learn from them, figure out a way for them to invest in me and try to like get me to level up.
Yeah.
And so it's deliberate practice, and then it's just time. And perseverance, right? And so, but I thought, okay, well, the limiting, if this is like a formula, I feel like it's kind of tried and true. Like, what's the limiting thing there? And to me, it was always the motivation. It was can you basically control your emotions, master your emotions to where like when you're feeling, you know, the weight of, oh my God, it's been 3 months, 6 months, a year, I'm not seeing the results. How can you keep going, right? And to me, that was like the most interesting thing. And so I did like I remember I did like a TEDx thing on this in high school, and I got really like interested in all this stuff, and I felt like what I found was that ultimately the best way to keep going is to surround yourself with people that make you keep going, you know, like mentors, and peer group, you know, like mentors and peer group, because that's honestly when I like, you know, when I had these setbacks, if it wasn't for these people who believed in me, I don't know, like, I don't know, like maybe I wouldn't have gone, especially before I had any results. Like once I've seen it once, twice, like now I actually like it when people don't believe in me. It's like kind of fuels the fire. Then
you've trained that muscle.
I've turned into like the Kobe. Kobe did the same thing, right? He almost like sees it. He likes being the villain, you know, like, and because I've had it happen to me so many times before, I'm like, all right, what? Like, it honestly doesn't matter what I think or what you think. It's just like, if I keep going for a long, like I said, there's this template. I just like do it, then eventually I'll break through and have that. So I had this whole foundation around peak performance, and that's what kind of led into the interviews. And like, actually, that's what initially the peak performance thing. I found Tony Robbins.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, my hero.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was like, I remember stumbling on YouTube for like visualization stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, because like that's what I was exploring in terms of like getting a level up in basketball, and I found Tony Robbins talking about like the cycle of getting certainty in something, and like, you know, basically. So there's this really interesting study, okay? And it's like they took 3 groups of basketball players, and it was like one group shot free throws every day, like one group, I think you've probably heard this, right?
Yes.
So free throws every day, one group, like 100 free throws a day. One group didn't shoot at all, but they just visualized, you know, shooting. And then one group that shot like 50 and like visualized 50. And the group that obviously shot the best is the middle group. But the reason is because they were
the middle group being the ones that fully visualized it?
No, I think this is the
the 50-50.
Yeah, 50-50, right? Because they would do it, but then they would go back and like envision in their mind, okay, like what does a perfect shot look like? Over and over and over and over and over.
And then they got to practice it.
Yeah, exactly. And they got enough certainty, but then they got to practice it right as well. So and so I stumbled across this really interesting concept that was in this Tony Robbins video of the cycle of belief and like how you get belief in something. And it goes, so if I believe a ton that something's going to happen, then I'm going to take like massive action, right? And then if I take massive action, then I'm going to get good results, after enough time. And those results are going to feed into my initial belief. I'm going to say, oh, yeah, of course, I got good results. And I'm going to believe more that if I take more action, I'm going to get good results. And then and it's a positive cycle, right?
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. Versus the opposite, which is, oh, man, I don't think this is ever going to work. And so you don't do much. You take like tiny bits of action and you don't get any results. And then it feeds back in and you say, see, I told you it wasn't going to work out.
Yeah. I think the problem is most people feel like they need to do something before they can believe they're capable of doing it, rather than starting with the belief and the identity, like I am the type of person that's capable of doing this, and then reinforcing that new made up identity with the actions that actually support that. Yeah. So it's kind of like you got to reverse it.
Yep. And so I think it's a long way of getting back to the initial question. I think I was really lucky when I was young to have people that instilled that belief before there was actual results. And then once I started getting results, then it became an identity. And now that's why honestly why I keep going now is because am I who I believe I am? You know, like, and yeah, I think I am. So I have to show up every day and do it. So yeah, so that's why I have to keep going, because it's like, and then I look back at my past and it reinforces it. So I'm like, okay, yeah, you know. So you know, when I get down, sometimes all I need is like a break, and then I go and I look back at like everything in my life that I've done that has taken the same sort cycle approach, and then it reinstills the faith of like, okay, you know, I just need more patience. This is just a bigger mountain I'm climbing right now, you know?
Yeah. But that's powerful because you get to tap into your history of achievements and the things you've overcome. And that obviously, it's easy. It's also good to reflect on those things because it's easy to forget just like how hard of a situation you dealt with in the past and how that can instill the confidence you need to overcome your present challenges.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool. So then talk to me about Pat's. Like you studied computer science, you did freelance for a bit, and then so like what was it that sparked this moment, this epiphany of like, whoa, I need to go start this company and like build this? Like what did you discover, what problem, and how did it lead you down this route?
Yeah. So just going back to basically, okay, I felt like after 10 years of basketball, I had like figured out that truth, which was how do you basically control your emotions and your belief to achieve like anything. I was like, that's what I learned from basketball. It's like I set this foundation where I believe I can go do anything now. Yeah, and it was just through these endless, like, I mean, I probably went through literally 10 of these cycles of, oh, I don't think I can do this, and then breakthrough, and then like, I don't think I can do this, breakthrough, and then I like reflected heavily on it, did a whole like, you know, TEDx thing about it, and then when I committed to play basketball at Johns Hopkins, which I can talk to you about, my whole recruiting process was like, again, one of these like up and down things, and but then once I had committed, I found myself with some time, and naturally I've always been super curious. I've done like music my whole life, always been like just reflective, and I always thought, oh, you know, like when I grow up, my potential paths, okay, maybe the NBA, but the genetics weren't there for me. But entrepreneurship always sparked my interest. You know, I don't know if you did this early in your like schooling, but we had like a Shark Tank mock thing in like 8th grade, and
that's cool.
And I loved it. And I was like, okay, you know, like Shark Tank's really cool. Watch the Social Network movie, you know, like every entrepreneur. And so when I had this time after my basketball season ended my senior year, I literally the next week I was like, okay, what's the next challenge? Because I have like 7 months before I have to start. It was this March of 2018. I have 7 months before I have to start school and like do the basketball thing again. And I was like, what's the next hill I want to apply this template to?
But hold on, you could have like just been like, okay, I have a summer before this starts. I can finally like chill, like have a fun summer, whatever. Why were you like, screw the fun? I want to like go climb a freaking mountain.
Because it was so fun to break through. It was like the best thing ever. I was like, oh my God, like to shatter what I thought was possible, like to transform myself. That was the ultimate like hero's journey. Like I loved that. I was
like addicted to
I was
the
like
growth.
got addicted to that. Exactly. To the growth. Exactly. So I was like, I want to do this with everything. Like I don't want to just do this with basketball. Like I want to do this in music. I want to do this in entrepreneurship. And so, so I actually started with music, and I started cold email because I think I found like Tim Ferriss or Tony Robbins, and I started listening from the Tony Robbins like visualization stuff, right? Like it wasn't far to get to a Tim Ferriss podcast episode and start exploring like, you know.
That's funny. I went from Tim Ferriss to Tony Robbins. So yeah,
exactly.
they're pretty close.
They're all in the same echo chamber. So yeah, anyway, I started hearing these stories, and I was like, oh man, like, and then like the Tim Ferriss cold emailing stuff. And so I remember this is like another foundational story. It's called the Pandora moment.
Whoa.
Yeah, the
I
Pandora
like the
moment.
title.
Exactly. So here's what happened is the next mountain I was climbing was like partially music. And I had just come off doing a year-long independent study of music theory, and I was writing some songs in it, and I've always sang my whole life, so I was like, okay, you know what, like, I want to take the next step here. I want to do the same thing, right? So, but I was getting kind of stuck in the songwriting process. So I thought, oh man, like, like Pandora, I don't know if you know, they have this thing called the music genome. It's how they rank songs. It's how they suggest stuff in their algorithm. They don't actually have like a, Spotify has like a collaborative filtering like algorithm, right? Like to discover weekly, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Pandora, the way that they did it was they hired like 400 trained music theory analysts, and they would literally listen to a song. Like they would have these analysts like listen to songs and break them down into like their subatomic parts. So they'd have like 400 different metrics, parts that compose a song. Whoa. And we're talking like tempo, pitch, all these different factors. And then they would basically say, okay, well, like you like this song, which has all these, metrics, then you'll probably like this song, which has like very similar. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's how they do it.
400 metrics for a song.
Yeah.
That's
it's like,
nuts.
Crazy, right? Like that's, and so I don't know if they kept it up. Like, I don't know if they can keep doing it, but long story short, I found this out and I was like, boom, I've got it. I'm basically gonna, take a deconstructed song of an artist I love and use it to help me reconstruct my sound. So I emailed like Tim Westergen, the CEO of Pandora, and basically everyone in the C-suite. And then I emailed like a bunch of music analysts. And I was just like, hey, I'm a high school student. Like I'm super interested in the Pandora Music Genome Project. I would love to get the genome for like these certain songs that I was trying to model after. And so a week goes by, no answer. 2 weeks go by, no answer. Like 2.5 weeks go by, and I get a response, not from anyone major, honestly. I got a response from like one of their senior music analysts who I had found his email on like a blog from like 2011. And he said like, hey Alex, like this is super cool. Basically I can't give this to you outright, but like I'm happy to like jump on a call and like talk to you. And his response, even just the fact that he responded to me was like, oh wow. Like it worked. It worked. Like I wasn't actually looking for the information. I was just looking to see if like a random cold email would actually get me in touch with someone. Yeah, and it did. And so after that, I was like, oh, okay. Like, it was like that was the initial cycle of like, take action, belief, or get results, feed the belief. So now the belief was like heavy, and it was like if someone didn't answer, I was like, oh, they probably just have a lot going on.
Yeah.
Like maybe I'll send them a follow-up. Hey, just checking back in. But I never took it personally. I never was like, oh my God, like I sent this email and no one responded. It was more like I would send like, I don't know, 20 emails and one person answered. I was like, oh my God, yes, it's working.
It's a numbers game.
Exactly. It's a numbers game. So anyway, simultaneously with music, here's the problem is then the belief became so inflated, like I could do anything. I tried to do so many things at once. So I was like, I want to take the next step in music. I want to take the next step in basketball. I want to take the next step in entrepreneurship. And the reality is you can do, I believe you can do anything, but you can't do everything, especially not at one time. So what happened was I then was like, all right, I'm going to do the copy paste entrepreneurship. So I had started like dabbling with an idea with my two smartest friends, and we had no idea what we were doing. I mean, I was trying to learn to code. I remember watching like tutorials and just like, oh my God, this is crazy. Then I joined a startup, like an AI startup. I had no idea how to code. Somehow I like kind of got my way into an AI startup, and I was like running their. Like on my local MacBook Air, I was like running their code, and it was like someone was like, guiding me through the whole script so I could actually run it. I was like, what's going on? So I had now this like pursuit of music. I still had basketball. I just was kind of like, that's on the back burner, so I can go explore other stuff right now. And I had this urge to go into entrepreneurship, and I joined a startup, and I was doing my own thing. And so I was like, all right, I got to get around, I basically had to speed up this process. And luckily my school had this program at the end of the year where I got to shadow an alumni who was an entrepreneur. And so I did, and he was like, "What do you want to do these next 2 weeks?" And he was part of this group entrepreneurs organization, and
Yeah.
because I had like all this, preparation context with like what Tim Ferriss does and my own kind of journey of like deconstructing people in basketball, I was like, I want to interview them, and I came with this list of like 26 questions, and that's what we did. And after 2 interviews, I was like, this is amazing. Like, I love doing this, and I ended up doing 30 interviews that summer.
All cold emails, like that's how
No,
you found the
so what?
people?
Here's the secret, right? Like, you need like one of these cold emails to work, and then you need to actually have a good exchange, and then you need to leverage warm intros, because
yes.
that's like ultimately the success rate with warm intros is so much higher. But you can get in the door with the cold email. And so it wasn't like, I say it was like cold emails. It was cold emails in some cases.
That was a starting
It
point.
was a starting point. But then it was like leveraging, like I would always ask at the end of a meeting, like, who are 2 people you think I should talk to next? And then I would get intros. And then I would go and talk to them, And then I started having some like really just crazy luck. Like one time I was shadowing an entrepreneur, and we were on the train. We were NJ Transit from New Jersey to New York. And we were talking, and it was like early 6 a.m. And this woman behind us overhears our conversation, and the guy, he's like, "Oh, I got to get in touch with this VC firm," and she's like, "Oh, did you mention this firm? I actually work there. Like I'm happy. Like, let's talk right now." So then she comes and like sits in the booth with us. We're like talking the whole train ride, and at the end she goes, "Oh, well, like, what are you doing here?" to me, and I was like, "Oh, I'm in high school. I'm just like tagging along here for the ride." And she was like, "Well, like, how can I help?" And I was like, "Well, I'm just doing these interviews of entrepreneurs, CEOs." She was like, "Oh, yeah, I could basically follow up with me, because I think we can get you connected to the chairman of Coca-Cola." And I was like, "All right, yeah,
Sure, why not?"
So like things like that would happen, and it's just like craziness. And yeah, it culminated with one of these guys I talked to was like, "Look, like if you do like 10, 20 more of these interviews, I think there's enough content where we can co-author a book, and it'll be like the patterns of success across these people." And that was 2 weeks before I started my freshman year at college. So that's I'll leave it there to where you want to go next. But
that reminds me of this book called, I forget exactly what it's called, but it's like The Back Door to Success.
Oh yeah. There's a couple.
Alex.
Third Door.
Third Door. There we go.
Third Door by Alex Schachne, which is also funny enough. I read that a year later, or not a year, 6 months later, while I was in my freshman year of college, and I was like, "Oh my God, this guy has my name, and he did the same things."
Wow, I could have written this book.
I don't know. I mean, he took it to the next level. He did like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Steven Spielberg. He interviewed like he went to the mountaintops of interviewing, but it's crazy.
Good book.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, let's dive into Pat. So tell us a little bit about Pat and kind of where the inspiration came from, and also like I guess the problem you encountered that made you want to actually start this.
Absolutely. So it all ties together, right? After this summer of interviewing, I show up, and the first day I'm at Johns Hopkins, there's an orientation barbecue, and I sit next to a new faculty member. He just got hired, and his name's Farouk Day, and he had just left Stanford, where he was running their career services and helping to start this new class and movement called Life Design. And Life Design is like, there's a book called Designing Your Life by Dave Evans and Bill Burnett, who are 2 professors at Stanford. And it's addressing this problem that pretty much every student has, which is like, what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to do after I graduate college? And it's like a problem that never goes away. Like constantly you're having these maybe like, quarter life crisis, midlife crisis, right? It's like always like, okay, what am I going to do next? And I felt like, so I met this guy, Farouk, and we had this conversation. I told him all about the summer, and he goes, "Oh man, like you just took life design to the absolute extreme," because I was interviewing these people, shadowing people. I was basically, in life design terms, prototyping or testing out what these different life paths would look like by doing these things. And because of that, I had so much information. Like I had so much data to make better decisions on. And what I realized was like, oh my God, I'm surrounded by so many smart people here at Hopkins. Academically, they blew me out of the water, but I was like, they all struggle with this, what am I going to do after college thing. And like, wouldn't it be, how much wasted potential is there because of that? Because like they don't have clarity on kind of like what they want to go do, and I think that there's totally like a natural, it's natural to like kind of not know, and you have to try things to figure things out, right? But like, how could you speed that process up was like the big kind of, that's what I wanted to, I was like, I could devote my life to that, because it's like, because if you can save someone years of experimenting, trying to figure out what their thing is, like getting them to figure out kind of like what fulfills them every day and how they could design a life around that, I was like, that's pretty powerful stuff. So it was like, how could I scale this experience I just had with interviewing to all these students? That was really the impetus. And then I did, originally it was like me and Farouk partnered. We did like events, and we would introduce life design, and we'd bring in speakers, and had like a DJ, we had music going. It was like kind of Tony Robbins-y vibe. Then we were like, events are kind of hard to keep doing. Like, we want to do tech. And that was when I pivoted and learned to code and like incubated my house for a summer and did a startup called ImagineX, which was really the precursor to Paths. And so that was like 2.5 years. And we ended up building, kind of, then you actually have to get into the implementation, right? So you have this like nice high level mission, which is, it's nice, but honestly it doesn't mean shit unless you can actually like, you have a product that's like delivering, on, so many levels. It's got to be delivering on like value prop. Then the UX actually has to be like compelling enough where like, I'm going to open this thing every day and like use it. And like, then you're talking about, the loops that are built into a product and like, and so you have to get really good at, UX and design. Then you actually have to build the thing. And like, I had no, so it's like, you go down the rabbit hole of what it actually takes to then execute on that with a tech solution. And that was like 2.5 years of that. And then I basically, we got lucky with that startup because we wanted to build basically a recommendation app for the life design process. So it would take your ideas as inputs and give you next steps as outputs, essentially. So like who to talk to if you want to learn more about computer science, careers, videos to watch, resources online, like what to do next. And we just didn't execute that well on that. But we got kind of lucky because then Hopkins needed a recommendation app for all their virtual career fairs. So they were having these big virtual career fairs because COVID hit, and they needed an app that basically connects students to employers to talk to at these career fairs virtually. And so then we basically said, we already have all the infrastructure. Let's just do that. So we did that, and we licensed it to them. And then I took a break, and I was like, oh man, like this is not it. Like I don't want to build an app that just does career fair recommendations. Like I'm trying to, what's that original vision, right? Like how could I scale those interviews? And this was off the back of Clubhouse becoming super hot in January 2021, and podcasts were blowing up. Audio was huge over COVID. And I thought, man, wouldn't it be great if you could basically scale, my experience I just had, 3 years ago before I came to Hopkins, interviewing people. Well, then I was like, actually, there is a scalable way of doing it. It's called podcasts. Like I listen to a podcast and I can get a really good sense of what someone's life looks like. And I don't know. I mean, that's part of my process when I'm like thinking about what do I want to do next. I explore, and a lot of times I'm listening to podcasts, or I'm having conversations. But the scalable version is a podcast. So, but then I was like, man, it kind of sucks that these are like an hour or an hour and a half, because usually there's like 5 minutes of gold, that actually matter. And so I thought, it would be really cool if you could take like the best parts of a podcast, and basically make it dynamic. Have an app where like I could ask someone a question, they can just respond with the part of the podcast I'm curious about, which is the question, So, and Paths actually, there was a previous iteration of that, which was like I was using 3JS. I was doing like this crazy visualization stuff. I could show it to you later, but it was about storytelling. So it was like, what's another medium of storytelling? And I thought audio was great, and you really captured the energy and like essence of somebody, and you got to really, I think there's something about listening to someone's audio that's super personal and authentic. And so I started, I basically said, okay, I want to build a social network where you can hear about people's career experiences through short audio snippets. So I can kind of give you the two. So it's founded on like these two theses, right? And the first was like, audio is exploding. I think that's only going to continue. And I think there's so many people that could have podcasts that don't. And this knowledge is just locked in their brain. So the only way you're going to get it is if they go on a podcast or if you have a conversation. And that's that was the workflow, right? Is you go on LinkedIn, you ask someone to chat for like 15 minutes, or you get an intro and like you talk to somebody. So I thought audio is exploding, but there's so much information that's locked in long form audio podcasts. And so basically, could you do what TikTok did for video, but with audio? So taking these long form videos and now boom, like short form, and unlock the value of that. And I think even now it's only getting better, because you just have like, OpenAI, like Whisper just came out, where now you can like transcribe things. I mean, I'm using like AWS, but transcribe, but the ability to like index these audio sound bites now is getting better and better and better. And so I think that being able to create, search through audio is a huge trend that like I believe in. The second thing is, I think, like I was saying before, career discovery is mainly done through conversations. And so I basically believe in those two trends. And so that's what kind of caused me to go out and build Paths. And now it's a year later. So
interesting. Yeah, that's cool. I love the journey behind it, and kind of the purpose in the connecting, a young person that like wants to figure out what path, what career they want to pursue, with someone that has the experience and is able to give the perspective needed. Yep. And just to clarify, I guess like a little of how it works is like, you would go on the platform, you're able to find people that have answered questions in the form of an audio. So maybe an example what would be like an example question?
So basically, like, I could go on Paths right now, go to Julian's profile and ask him, how'd you get into startups, or how'd you get into interviewing? And he could record 10-second to 10-minute answer as an audio clip that he can share anywhere on the internet. Anyone can like, comment, follow up, create kind of a thread on, and now actually you can join communities around certain topics. So I could join a startups community, and I could ask kind of anyone in the group, what's their startup story, what's their founding story, how did they get into it, and you begin to get kind of this really interesting look at a bunch of perspectives of people's paths and how they navigated, and now even some companies are using Paths as a recruiting tool to be able to share their founding story, to take questions, frequently asked questions, and answer them from members of the team, which typically you'd have like an info session, or like you would have to talk to each member of a team to get. But I think there's a really powerful use case around like getting better qualified people by being able to hear from members in an organization or group in the recruiting process. So
right. Yeah, there's probably like a lot of interesting use cases like that you can tap into, which I'm sure is cool, but also makes it challenging into like which use case to focus on. But yeah, and that kind of leads into my next question of like, like what stage are you currently at, and how's it going so far?
Yeah. So I think there's an interesting, I was watching this YC video, right, where it goes through like companies that have made it and their first 5 launches. So Paths right now is on its third launch. So the first launch I got at was actually last summer, but oh my God, the product was like bare bones. It was like the MVP of MVPs. And I was doing these beta tests. I was kind of like, it wasn't like even out publicly. It was just like, okay, I launched in a private beta. Then I did like a more public launch in January, and then I kind of like relaunched over and over at Hopkins, but never like really big. It was almost like, okay, we're kind of out of beta, like, come check it out. But then things would break, and like, I had honestly, because I was building it all myself, there was a lot of features. It was navigating like the maze of, like they say, the idea maze of like, oh my God, there's like too many features now. I got to cut some of these back and like get more users to like, just like the users to features ratio was terrible. It was like, wow, so many features and like not that many users. So, but yeah, then kind of reset, graduated in May, and relaunched in August. And since then, what's really, I'd say, here's the progression, is like originally Paths was just focused on, okay, I'm really interested in Julian and becoming like a founder. I know Julian's a founder. Almost like an AMA, right? I go on, I can ask a question to Julian, he'll respond with audio. Then what happened is like there was a lot of content, but it's almost like content overwhelm. Like it wasn't, it wasn't organized well. And so then it became, okay, like let me create communities and topics to organize this content. And so it's almost like subreddits now of different Paths communities. So you have like paths.audio/startups, /finance, etc. And that was better. But now then it became, okay, well, like I can also have these pages, these similar kind of community pages, but for companies and for universities and for university groups and pretty much any groups that just want to have a page to use Paths. And now I think, it's been a month and a half after our launch, and what you have after a launch is like you have a spike, right? So we had a spike, and the reception, honestly, on socials and stuff was pretty good. Like people resonate with the idea. But then it was like, okay, well, like what's the use case? Like, how am I actually going to use this? Why should I come back to this every day? And now with these communities, there's really like 3 use cases that are emerging that are pretty compelling. And so the first one, like I mentioned, is for recruiting. And so originally that started with student groups, pre-professional groups, recruiting. And they have to, like, I don't know if it was like this at your college, but like they have, like a finance, like a kind of like pre-investment banking group and like a like VC group at Hopkins and like a few other ones like that. And for their recruiting, basically they answer the same questions over and over, and new students especially are like, what are the options? Where can I go to learn about, they're like overwhelmed, right? So, so we basically created these like one-click landing pages that these groups could send around to new students and answer frequently asked questions, and basically put like a button to go and apply, and then track like, okay, how many students came to that page, how many students listened to the clips or asked a question, and then how many actually converted to go and apply. And so we're kind of like in the middle of that experiment right now with a few of those groups. But then it was like, well, we could do this with companies too. So a few effing companies are gonna be testing that out as well in the next week or so, which is I think. I think it makes sense because right now, like I was saying before, the way career discovery works or company discovery is like either through conversations or like, you go on LinkedIn and try to get on the phone with someone who works at a company you're interested in. So that's a really interesting use case with recruiting. Another one is just like kind of traditional, like learning from alumni or from people who are further ahead of you in a certain path. And then that's what that was the OG Paths use case, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of different use cases. How do you know which one to focus on and prioritize? Because you want to stay focused.
Absolutely.
But also there could be a lot of different opportunities. So how do you gauge which of those potential use cases is worth focusing and narrowing in on?
Right. So, I mean, it's pretty much about being ruthless about what is the metric. And
What is the metric?
so for me right now, it's just daily actives. Like how many people are coming back every day. And I define an active as either like basically performing an action such as streaming, upvoting, commenting, etc. Right? So like how can I get engaged active communities? Because it's nice to get, I have over 1,000 communities on Paths now, but like how many of those are active and engaged? That's a different question. And so for me, that's the metric. And what I've seen so far, like for example, I started out with like university career centers. They were using it to try to gauge an alumni. And then we actually had another use case for like orientation. Like Georgetown student athletes use it for their orientation, which is nice. But like all that stuff is advice. And advice is like a nice to have. So in my mind, like those use cases right now are kind of like, they're nice, but like they're not driving active, engaged communities. Versus this recruiting thing, basically like I suggested this to, everyone I've talked to about this. I mean, recruiting is a must-have. You need to recruit. If you're any sort of organization needs to recruit, and if this can help you do it better and make it more efficient to find better qualified like candidates, that's actually like there's a real reason we need to do this and invest in making our page look good and marketing it and answering these questions well.
Yep.
And so that's how I view it. So right now, that's like my number one focus because there's a very clear, it's just about like how painful of a problem is the solution solving.
Yeah, and so much of this too is like for these different potential use cases, like something I would look at is one, what's the problem? That's very basic, right? So for companies that want to recruit, the problem is like, how do you get more candidates to apply it as well as like high quality ones?
Yeah.
And then the second thing after identifying the problem is what are their current ways? How are they currently solving this problem? What are they currently doing to up their recruiting game? And based on those different solutions and approaches, how well are they working?
Yeah.
And where are they falling short? What's the underserved need given the current solutions that they've explored?
Yep.
And then like what is the gap that exists to see how big the opportunity is for you?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to be really ruthless, I think, about like what the feedback is you're getting. Like when you're talking to people about potential, especially because like it's an interesting place to be where you have like a general product that you're looking for specific use cases in, right? Versus building like a very specific thing and then branching out. Like if I was doing it over again, I'd probably build the specific, like I would do a lot differently in terms of like building much more leanly and then, focusing very sharply and then, expanding out. But now I have like a general thing and I've got to go find the specific thing to go focus on. And it's like being very ruthless about the feedback I'm getting. And like, if it's just like, I don't know, Furcon has this great saying, like friends don't count.
Yeah.
Like if your friend is an active user, like you're counting, like just throw them out. They don't count. Like friends don't count. Even people don't count. Like go to people who you don't have any, like you don't know at all. And like basically, and then like pitch the, like to me, it's like, hey, I see you have this problem. Like, here's the solution. Like here's I think a potential way this could help you. Like what do you think? And that's not even, I don't think that's a great way of doing it, but like unfortunately that's kind of where I'm at is like, I've got this solution and I know you have a problem. Like, can this really help you? Like how can I serve you the best that I can? And I think with these use cases I'm talking about with recruiting, it's been like, oh yeah, this actually really does solve our problem. Like this would help us a lot. We actually really want this. And a lot of that is just like, what's the follow-up look like? Are they like asking you every day for it? Cause like I've had, people are like texting me the past week, like, yo, when's this thing being shipped? Like when's this coming out? Because like, we actually really want this versus like, I've been in the land of like building hypothetical features, that I think would be great. Like Steve Jobsing it and no one uses it. So it's being actually really ruthless about like taking, people like begging you to build the thing.
Yeah. 100%. And so I'm curious also You said you do a lot of things differently. I'm curious what else comes to mind. What are some big mistakes you would have wished you avoided?
Okay, yeah. So basically, and I was kind of in this place because I'd launched Paths, and I was like, oh man, this definitely it didn't go viral. It wasn't like I had tons and tons of people like waiting to get in. And maybe I didn't build a wait list or anything like that. But what I would do differently is like I would try to get people to beg me for whatever the product is before I even touched code, a line of code. Like so, and the way I did a mini experiment with this, right? I had all this audio infrastructure, and I had this idea. Okay, well, Be Real is like going crazy right now. What if there was an app called Real Talk, and it was audio Be Real? So you get one notification a day, and you have to record 60 seconds in reaction to a hot pop culture topic.
That's cool.
Yeah, and then you get a notification, and like you got to record yours to see your friends. And maybe we crowdsource like the topic, so it's like location based, and maybe it's like a interesting topic to the founders and community. That's or at your university or whatever. And I was like, okay, so like if I had taken the old Alex approach, I would have been so excited. All right, boom, React Native app. I'm coding. Like I'm getting this out as fast as possible. I'm shipping this as fast as possible. No, don't do that. Do not even touch a line of code. Don't do that. Like what I did instead was I took my camera out and I built in public with video. I was just like, all right, we're going to make audio Be Real version. Here's the logo, here's the name, and here's a landing page. And the landing page was super simple. All it had was like, this is the idea, and here's a text box. Like, give me your number if you want me to build this. Oh. And I posted a TikTok about it, and it didn't go crazy. I got like 10.5K views. Like 1,000 likes, but it converted. It's like 10.5K views, 1,000 likes, converted to like 100 phone numbers, organic. Like people typed in realtalk.lol, REEL talk.lol, and gave me their phone number. And like, okay, what is that? How much signal is that? I mean, it's okay. But I went back on TikTok and I said, look, I'll build this if I get 1,000 submissions.
Yeah, this is reminding me of a tweet Farza made, who's the founder of BuildSpace.
Yeah.
He tweeted like when they build things, they kind of like have a sequential list, a framework for approaching it. So it's like, what's a 1 hour experiment I can run to test something? So this would be like maybe super quick landing page or create a TikTok, engage the interest. Okay, we got like 10,000 views, 1,000 likes. Okay, there's some interest here. So then what's the next phase? What's like a 1 day experiment I can run to like test this idea out?
Yeah.
Okay, do something more complex. And then if that works and you get more interest, it's like, does that warrant investing a week in it, and so on? So it's like, how can you start with the smallest point, a 1-2 hour investment that give you enough signal for a day and then a week, and then maybe you keep on pursuing it indefinitely.
That's exactly it. And I would build it like, I would time box the building as well, right? Like I would, because I think I've had this tendency before. It's like, oh man, this feature would be cool, like super cool, and it's like, or it's like, oh, we're gonna launch on Thursday, or we're gonna launch tomorrow, right? We just have to finish this one thing, and like, you're doing the thing, and and it's like, oh well, this other thing came up, and this other thing came up, and then like suddenly you've spent like a week just in the code, like just or like, oh, this needs to be redesigned, or like. You can get lost in the sauce really quickly. Yeah. And so I think I now set a timer. When I start coding, I literally have a timer. Like, I'm not going to code like 2 hours. Like, that's it. You either, like, whatever you get done in these 2 hours, like, that's what you're shipping. Because, like, you can't just keep going. You need to. And so part of that's like, okay, well, how good am I? Can I ship, a product in 2 hours? Working on that. But
yeah, that's always hard too, because coding is the hardest thing to like predict and get right time wise.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but that's how I would do differently, which is like I would build in public in some way, build up the demand and get enough signal where like literally I want people begging me for this product. Like I want them to be texting me every day. Yo, when is this out?
Yep. Yeah, and the key is, what's the minimum thing you can do to get that signal? That's always the question.
And then also, you need, like, the second thing is you need constant contact with reality. Like, constant. Because the first version of the Real Talk app it's not going to be, it probably won't hit the mark, you know? It probably needs it needs like a ton of iterations. So like, how can you get those iterations faster? And the thing, I think it's really cool now, like I literally just like, I design something, I record a video of it, I put it on TikTok. I say, okay, like, does this make sense? Like, I get a bunch of people to basically be and you can do this in a bunch of ways. You don't have to use TikTok. You can have a group chat with like early adopters, people, you know, who really want the thing, and you like text them, here's the design. What do you guys think?
Yeah. So much of it is many times just finding the right communities.
Yeah.
Where what you're building or the problem you're trying to solve is filled with like people in that community that you end up finding. So I always ask that first, like who is the type of person that has this problem, and what communities digitally and in person do they usually hang out in?
Right.
As a way to get early signal.
Yeah.
But cool. Awesome. Moving on from there, one thing I'm curious about, Alex, is I think you've you kind of have like a lot of history around your personal growth journey, right? And the mindsets you developed over time. And I'm curious, like, how something like entrepreneurship, in both its glorifying and agonizing moments, like what has entrepreneurship taught you about life in general?
I'm tempted to quote Arnav, right? Like, if you want to really know yourself, start a company, because it's really like you get to see what you're made of, you know. And there's something really, I heard this quote, like, it's really special if you believe, like, I think Paul Graham tweeted this. It's like, if you believe you can do hard things, but it takes hard work.
Yeah.
Like, to be able to believe you can do hard things is really powerful. Like, I'm thinking to myself, man, I thought basketball was going to be the hardest thing. Like, the whole basketball training was going to be the hardest thing I ever did. But no, it's not. It's like, no, it's building a company. And anything else, I'm like, wow, you know, I'm 22, right? Anything else I do in my life, I'm like, won't even compare. Like, now I go up on stages, right? Like, yesterday, went to this open mic, and literally didn't have a guitar, didn't know what song I was going to sing, and I was alone. My friends weren't there, and it was just me. And I was just like, all right, you know, I started talking to this random dude, like, was able to get his guitar. I like go up there, it's like out of tune, it's like a wide string guitar. I was like, oh, I can't play this song because it's too big, and I just did it. And it's like, because I'm in constant discomfort, it's like I don't have anything to lose. Like, I just do things now that otherwise I would have thought twice about. But it's just like, no, I'm like constantly in discomfort. So, or like I'm constantly in a state of getting rejected and failing, and that's the game. That, like, anything else is kind of just, it doesn't matter. It's like,
yeah. I mean, you've learned how to get comfortable with discomfort, which I think
exactly.
is one of the biggest superpowers you can develop in life.
Yeah, it's like, exactly, that's it. It's like the emotional state of discomfort is the default state right now. And it's like, that's where I'm living. So it's like, that's where I'm living. So, like, anything else, like, I guess, why not? Like, come over and reject me.
It's like, I don't live in San Francisco. I live in discomfort.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. Yeah. I'd live in discomfort and rejection and failure, you know?
Yeah. Hell of a home.
Hell of a home, yeah. I mean, and it's definitely not like, it's such an interesting reaction I had to it initially, because, and I think Founders Inc. does an amazing job of cultivating this, like, culture of radical transparency and, like, no bullshit, right? Yeah. Like, you come to Founders Inc. and, like, you talk to Furkan or, like, any of the guys here, and they'll go straight, like, right through all the bullshit, right to, like, the thing, and you're like, and some people, like, run from that. But I honestly, I was like, oh my God, this is awesome.
Yeah,
like,
this is what I needed.
I love it. I mean, at the same time, I hate it. Like, it's not good. Like
doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good at all. But, like, I know this is what I need. And I know that because my basketball coach in high school was exactly like that. This 6'7" Albanian, you know, like, scary guy, honestly. And he would, like, you know, he'd basically, you know, it was over when he'd call you over and he'd go like this. And he'd start, and you just, boom. I mean, like, taking that type of stuff, it was just like, I mean, it was all good. All love. I mean, we love each other. So not to say he was saying anything crazy, but it was just like, he was giving you the hard truth, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was literally the best thing that ever happened. And there's another coach, Bobby Hurley, who's probably the best basketball coach and best high school basketball coach ever. Inducted in the Hall of Fame, coached at St. Anthony's in New Jersey. And he was just like that. It's like, I think the people who are the hardest on you, but they cut through the bullshit. They just tell you what it is and the reality of it. And like, I love that. I
mean, like, everyone needs to be slapped in the face.
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing is that it's not fun. You don't want to get slapped.
Yeah.
But if you have the courage to be slapped, like you'll respond in either two ways. One, you'll be like, what the hell? Like, why are you slapping me? Like, that's mean. I feel awful. This isn't good. Right. But if you can get past that, then you can identify, you can question, like, why are they slapping me in the face?
Right.
And that why, if you uncover it, is like, wait a second, holy shit, I just uncovered a blind spot on how I'm doing something I'm wrong, or it's something I completely glanced over.
Yeah.
So if you're getting slapped in the face, should probably be open to uncover why the hell that's happening.
Yeah, no, for sure. I guess one other thing I'll say about entrepreneurship is like very high highs and very low lows. I don't know if you've experienced. Have you experienced?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, it's a constant roller coaster.
Yeah. Exactly.
And there's this great saying from this entrepreneur named Naveen Jain, and he's like, life is constantly ups and downs, no doubt, and entrepreneurship definitely like highlights that even more so. But he creates this great analogy that, like, imagine you're in the hospital and they have you plugged into a device and you have a heart rate monitor, right? And if you look at a person who's alive, their heart rate monitor goes up and down, up and down, up and down. And then once the person dies, it's flat. So it's basically like, if what you want is comfort and if what you want is to not have ups and downs, and it's almost like you've died before you've even died.
Right.
So the ups and downs, firstly, it's a natural part of life, but two, it's how you know you're alive.
Right.
And part of the downfall, like feeling the low lows, is also what highlights the high highs. So I think just understanding the natural course of life and the ups and downs makes it more comfortable, but it's still fucking hard.
Yeah. And I'll say, like, actually, someone asked me, like, a kid in college, they were like, oh, like, I'm thinking about entrepreneurship. Like, why did you go into it? And I said, because doing entrepreneurship is like living more life in less time. It's like how
That's
can
a good way to put it.
Yeah. It's like I'm living like the most amount of life in the least amount of time, because I'm every single day faced with a new thing. I'm forcing myself to grow, right? Like, I'm now having to do growth. Like, I've just done product for like a long time. I'm doing growth. And I wasn't, originally I was just like a good sales guy, like, so then it's like, okay, well, now I got to get good at product. And then, okay, engineering, design, talking to users now, and I'm getting good at growth. And it's like, I have to always level up my skill sets.
Yep.
And it's crazy. It's just like, and I have to do things that scare me. And it's, and I'm literally like, I'm just cramming more and more life.
Yeah, I love that way of thinking about it, and it's actually one of the main reasons I left my full-time job at Meta. Like, there's many reasons, but one of the biggest ones is to optimize for learning and growth.
Yeah.
Right, because a full-time job, like, you have stability, like you'll still learn a lot, especially at a good company like Meta. But in entrepreneurship, you're doing fucking everything. Especially you're a one-man army.
It's crazy.
You're freaking coding, designing, and trying to figure out what the fuck.
I don't recommend the solo founder route. But I think the basis of it was like, I'm sure you've read Naval, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, learn to build, learn to sell, you'll be unstoppable.
Yes.
Yeah. And so to me, I was like, well, shit. I've just gone through like I basically invested like 2.5, 3 years before I started Paths in the learning to build route.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I know I can sell. So shit. I mean, why don't I just, like, I want to get better at both. And I think I have such a long way to go, but like, again, it's like that foundational belief, right? If you can do it. And so, I would say it's obviously like, it's so much of a longer journey than I ever would have thought, but like, it's definitely also doing it, being a solo founder. It's like, it really is like me against me.
Yeah.
It really is me against me. It's like no one else is moving this thing forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of tennis. I played a lot of tennis,
Yeah.
being younger, and then I transitioned into soccer. And I think that was the biggest thing. Like tennis, like the mindset in tennis matters so much more, because if you ended up losing, most of the time it's because you lost your mindset, and you lost like the mental warfare against yourself. The other person like is going to impact your mindset, and the world around you. Your competition is gonna like influence you, but at the end of the day, it's just you against yourself and the mindsets you're able to battle, and the limiting beliefs you're able to identify and break. I think that's where the real magic happens, but shit's hard. In any case, last few questions for you, Alex. So you've studied success a lot, and you highly crave it, as I can tell. So and you even have a TEDx talk on the rational approach to success. So I'm curious, like, what is...
Disclaimer, I was 16, but...
That's insane. Yeah, I mean,
mean-
there's a whole thing around how do you do a TEDx talk at 16. But I'm curious, what does success mean to you, and what kind of success do you desire?
I would say success to me means living a very intentional, like living very intentionally. And so that means like in everything I'm doing, I'm doing it consciously and like with intention. I'm not reacting to life. I'm being proactive, and I'm actively designing the life that I want. Like to get, I can get into like specifics, right? Like I think Naval's like health, wealth, happiness thing is big, and like I can talk about my foundational values. Number one, it's people. Like even though I like go through this like, you know, I have this mode where I can go in like absolute obsession with a craft, and like I recognize a lot of times that comes at the expense of relationships.
Yeah.
I think the reason I can do that is because like I've been super lucky to have a amazing family growing up, and like that's like the foundation of everything, honestly, is like family and the people around me who've like invested in me, my friends. I think I have amazing friends, I have amazing family. Like that part of my life is like good, and it allows me to like go out and focus on me more.
Yeah.
I don't think I would be able to do like that's honestly I think number one. Like if I was starting from scratch, like zero anything, zero connection, zero research, it's like go make some friends. Like go make some friends and take care of your health, honestly. And that's like kind of what I did growing up, which is like I was an athlete. I was playing every sport. I was outside all the time. And I think that's built a really good foundation in my health and in my relationships. And now it's like, great, I can go and like take on these quests that maybe require sacrificing some time on your health and or on your relationships. But yeah, the two, so yeah, in terms of my values and like what I strive for, it's like to have incredible relationships, and then to also like push myself and go on these quests, these personal development heroes journeys, to transform myself and see like kind of what I'm made of. And like, and so, but to get back to my original response, like, I think it all comes from like living intentionally and like designing a life that you know will fulfill you. At the end of the day, like, I think I'm doing the entrepreneurship thing not because of like, I mean, a lot of people say this, right? But I really do believe it. It's like I'm addicted to the growth journey. Like the starting from like, you know, whatever, Joseph Campbell's like hero's journey circle, right? Like going into the darkness and coming out the other side and like being like, holy shit. Like, I don't know how I went in that jungle and like came out, but like I did it. And now I'm like so much of a stronger person. Like now I've a changed person, and I love that. And then I super value my connections in my relationship. So it's kind of like marrying those harmoniously.
Yeah.
Which is always a challenge, but yeah.
And that's how you do life design.
And that is life design. Yeah.
Yeah. And to that note, the final question here is like, what is the vision that you have for who you want to become and what you want to create, achieve, and give in your life? Like, what impact do you want to have in the creation and invention of the future?
I think so. This whole talk, right, has been about this arc, this circle of, basically going through an external quest to figure out like internally what are you made of. And we share this. I think my mission, I would say, is to help as many people do that, like go through that and come out the other side and design a life that they really love, like that they really like there's something, I mean, this is like cliche, right? But it's like, if you really design your life to where you love it, like you never need to escape it. You're like always like in it. And it's amazing. It's like, oh my gosh, like this is my everyday. And the more if I can if I can basically help as many people do that and tap into like their full potential of what they can do, that's what I'm about. And there's so many ways of that manifests. I think I want to be a teacher eventually in my life. Like I think I love teaching. Paths is like the way I think you do it at the biggest scale right now. But yeah, I would say that's the legacy I really want to leave, is like, he helped me transform my life. Yeah. Like believe in myself in ways I didn't even know. Or like, not to say I did that, just that I like helped in the journey. Like I made it could be simple as like you make the right connection to somebody, or that one of my stories resonates with somebody, or you use paths and like you hear someone else's story that resonates, right? Something like that would be, and then just to like, basically leave every interaction with somebody and have it be like, oh, that was a positive interaction. Like, give something of value, like, even if it's just like listening, because like that's a lot of times that's hugely valuable.
Yeah, sometimes that's all people need.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's all people need, as you know, as a great listener and interviewer yourself, right? So, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I resonate with that deeply, and I think for me, there's something so special and beautiful about acquiring the capacity to empower others to find what they have within them, especially when they're not able to see what it is they have within themselves, and you can, in some way or form, help them unlock that. That's so I resonate very deeply on that point, and it's a lot of my obsession as well.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I mean, and you see it with so many people. Like, I think it's something about, I don't know, when you get to a certain point, and I don't think, I mean, like, this is the hardest thing, right? Is like, when you're in the journey and you're still trying to like, you give back, you kind of have to go through the journey to like change yourself, and then you can like help someone else who's going through the journey change, get there. So like, for example, for basketball, right? Like, I can now help a lot of people in basketball. But for entrepreneurship, I mean, I'm getting there, but like, it's not like I've seen anywhere close to the whole arc of that story. Oh. And so it's like you go through it and you become so much better, so that then eventually you have the luxury to like actually help in transformative ways, right? Like once you've like, like, you know what I'm saying? Like once you actually have gone through that, imagine how many people you can help after you've like exited your company or like IPO'd a company. Mm-hmm. Like that's crazy. That's a crazy amount of people.
Yeah, no, it's huge. I also think that you should have people at 3 different levels. You should have people that are playing like at a higher level than you, and you can look up to them like as a mentor. You should have people that are at the same level as you, so that because you like relate with them, like we're at the same stage, we're trying to figure things out. Like, how are you approaching it? How am I approaching it? And then also like people that are like one step below you. because then you can serve as like a mentor and you learn a lot in that regard as well, on top of the obvious benefit of being able to give back a bit of what you've gotten.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah,
of those three
I
levels.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah. Cool, man. So thank you for sharing your path. Where can people follow along and learn more about your journey and path and follow you along?
Yeah.
Obviously, then, of course, in Pats. What's the domain? Pats.
Yeah, so paths.audio, paths.audio. And yeah, you can find me on TikTok at Alex Schach. That's Shaq like Shaquille O'Neal, SHAQ. My last name is Schachne, but I play basketball, and people just said, "Wow, you look so much like Shaq. We'll just call you Shaq."
Twins, complete
right?
twins.
And yeah, on Twitter at Alex_Schachne, my name, SCHACHNE. I might change the handles to be consistent. Yeah, they're kind of all over the map. Yeah, and maybe some music coming out eventually. I don't know.
We'll cool. Yeah. Drop an album.
Yeah.
Drop a mixtape.
We're working on. We'll see. Drop a mixtape. I love it. Yeah, maybe in the effing studio. Actually, I mean, this place we had a couple jam sessions in here. It is a vibe, as they say.
Yeah. The studio's multi-purpose.
Yeah, multi-purpose. Yeah, so. We'll see. Potentially an F-Inc album coming out. We'll see.
Dude, that'd be insane.
That would be really cool.
I'll spit some bars even though I don't have any.
Yeah, come in. We'll have you just We'll set it up. Imagine that, like an F-Inc album.
Oh my God.
I actually love that idea.
We'd break the billboards.
My long-term vision is I want to create like a creative studio. So imagine like 5 floors. Okay. Floor 1 is like dedicated to health. So a full basketball court, gym, maybe you've got like, some yoga rooms or like some meditation rooms, etc. Floor 2 is like a venture studio. You've got entrepreneurs, they're trying to change the world and stuff. And, give them a space like this. Floor 3 is for basically any sound related arts, music. So you got musicians jamming, you've got podcast studios. Yeah. And then the 4th floor is for like film. So people creating movies, documentaries, short films. And yeah,
TikToks.
5th floor, TikToks even. 5th floor is like any other creatives, comedians, magicians, just a space, because I think F-Inc is really cool in what they're doing to support entrepreneurs. But I've seen plenty of friends who go through the same lonely journey, carving their own path in the creative arts, that I think would benefit massively from like a studio, a community where they could be a part of. So that would be the dream long term, is you can like basically selfishly I get to combine like all of my my interests into one place, physical place where like. Yeah.
Wow, I'd be so curious, like the sort of magic and the intersections and interactions that could happen.
Imagine the magic. Yeah.
Imagine the magic.
Imagine the magic. Yeah.
So cool, man. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
it was super fun to have you on. But yeah, always love hearing about the journey and paths others have to share. So appreciate it.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, this is we talked about this. This is a in progress episode, right? Because both of us are in progress at the moment with our businesses, and I'm sure in the arc of the story, right? We're in the middle. We're in the jungle right now. So
we're in the tough part, finding product market fit. That shit's hard, man.
Yeah. So we'll come back when we've emerged.
Yeah, we'll either be trillionaires or broke.
On that note. See you guys later.
Take care. Be infinite, my friends.